as is typical, and the recording will be put up on the website as soon as I get the link from Zoom. So this evening, let me call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Our agenda this evening is to have public comment and then go on to review the Board of Ed meeting that was held last night. They had comments that dealt with moving their budget forward to public hearing. And so I'll share some of the slides that they had last night. We have a general discussion we'll have a general discussion about what's sort of the intent that all of us have with regard to what do we want to achieve with regard to the mill rate. Ed has given us in his proposal a reduction year to year, but we've got some goes ins and goes outs since that point in time. So I'll show you a little bit about the existing mill rate as it stands right now, and we'll talk a little bit further about some of the sensitivities and degrees of freedom that we have as it relates to the mill rate itself. And then lastly, or not lastly, but we'll ask Al to talk through some specifics about the surplus calculation as it currently stands, and then also some of the recent changes this week that he and Ed are suggesting relative to capital and or general revenue and expense. And finish up with a little bit about our calendar and our moving forward. So if that agenda is okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay, then is
Would you
there
like
any?
to accept it?
Well, we don't really need we don't need to accept it, but we'll go with it. How's that?
All right.
And is there any public comment? So Everett or anyone?
I got nothing.
Okay. Then we'll go right into the Board of Ed meeting last night. And let me see if I can share this.
Jim.
Yes?
Yeah, I didn't know if you, everyone always asks me what's going on in town regarding the COVID-19 situation. If you want me to give you a 1-minute update.
Sure, why don't you go ahead and do that right now, Ed, and then we'll go after the rest of the budget stuff.
Just
Thank
want
you.
to let you know that we have currently, as of today, 9 cases here in the I'm sorry, there was nine. We have no reported deaths. Finally beginning to get the information.
We're gonna flag you as a Russian spy.
I'm sorry?
That damn thing so much.
Please mute yourself if you're not talking so that we can clearly hear Ed or the speaker.
Yeah, so we've had no deaths to date, which is really good news. The bad news, I think, in general, is that we are probably looking to extend. We're not going to be where we thought we would be, maybe June 1st. That seems to be the data. We're probably looking more toward the mid-June. And we were, I think I might have mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned to you at a previous meeting, we were planning on opening up our summer camp on June 26th and our town beach on June 26th. That may or may not still happen. That's a little bit up in the air. We may be pushing that off for a week or two if trends continue the way they are. But the good news is that the state seems to have peaked. This part of the state of Connecticut has been less impacted than, let's say, the western part of the southwestern part of Connecticut. You know, our numbers are very low. For example, in Middlesex County, there's 321 cases. In Fairfield County, there's 2,400 cases. So That's patients hospitalized, by the way. So that have been hospitalized. Cumulative hospitalizations. 321 in Middlesex County, 2,400 in Fairfield County, and currently in Middlesex County we have 38 people in the hospital, but that number is dropping, so that's a good sign. So that's pretty much the update, unless anybody has any specific questions.
Questions or comments? There's a website that gives the Connecticut information daily. It's literally, it's portal.ct.gov, and you can get that the information with regard to the daily totals of all of the hospitalizations, deaths, and so on, by county and even by city. So if you have that interest in maintaining a daily awareness, that's the Connecticut portal does have that available.
Yeah, the cases are in the document, but the deaths are reported directly from our health director. That link is on our website, by the way.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, then we'll move to the Regional School District 13 budget discussions of last night. And what happened really was that the district did a couple of things. They got a new proposal from the school superintendent and finance director. And the second page of, let me see if I can get to that. Okay, so the second page here, is that too small? Can people read some of the numbers? I'll highlight. The original budget that Catherine proposed from the school district had like a $900,000 change year to year. And she has taken something like $160,000 out of the budget for next year. And well, maybe even more than that, so that she's able to, she and Kim are presented to the Board of Ed that they're able to get to the 0% or $0 year-to-year increase. So that 900 went down to 552 and some changes in revenue. But as you can see down at the bottom here, the operating budget is the same 34,602,207 proposal from them from the administration now to the Board of Ed for their consideration. And again, how did that happen? Well, $160,000 of it was a reduction in expenditures that they took out of next year's proposal. The biggest chunk here is the capital and equipment. And in fact, that's $139,000 plus another 120 that was originally in capital for the field house. And the Board of Ed took that out before this discussion. And then the Director of Finance, Kim Newberg, worked with Catherine, and they looked at what kind of a surplus will we have in this current fiscal year, fiscal 20, and how much of it can be applied. Well, they have the numbers from last night. You see here an application of $616,000 or more of surplus to next year's budget. Her total surplus was 683. So it was higher than they're applying. However, they're going to take the additional 67K and put it against the fiscal year 22 budget, which is typically what they do anyway. They take this year's budget and put it against 2 years out. So 67K will go 2 years out, but this 616 will go directly against next year's. And so the combination of these two numbers is really how they were able to get us to a $0 net year to year. And that's a big deal for us. In Middlefield, that actually means, this was just the last slide that they had, and it shows that they took the gym floor out over at Brewster as one of the capital items, and they took some other things out. They still have 254 in the 1,000 in the capital portion of their budget. But like I say, a number of things did in fact come out. So at the end of the day, the activity that they did gives us it's a $0 increase. Now we've got a little bit of a percentage change, but we've got, as a result of this, a $305,000 reduction in school expenses versus what the superintendent's original proposal was. So that's like $750,000 as a result of the proposal that she's given the Board of Ed. A last couple comments about that. The Board of Ed did vote in favor of moving this $0 year-to-year budget to public hearing. The public hearing will be on May 13th, and the vote and it'll be a video conference, I believe, Zoom kind of conference. The vote by the Board of Ed to adopt the budget based on what they hear at the public hearing and what they're feeling will be not June 1st as we had thought, but they've moved it up to May 27th. So May 13th is the public hearing, and May 27th will be the Board of Ed vote to adopt a specific budget for next year. But again, we're the beneficiaries of something like $300,000 versus Catherine's original proposal back in February. And that will certainly help as we look at the mill rate. Any questions about the Board of Ed action or their path forward?
Is that normal practice that a surplus, I think you just said that it was normal. It surprises me if that's the normal practice to have a surplus rolled into next year rather than just zeroing at that account, give the money back to the towns. But I'm junior here, so I'm learning. Is that pretty typical?
No, their normal practice, Mike, is they actually roll it 2 years. So it doesn't roll to the very next fiscal year. It typically goes into their unfunded or undesignated fund to be held an extra year. So a fiscal year 20 surplus would go into and be applied to the fiscal 22 budget. And so there's that year of keeping it in their accounts. And one of the things that it does is it gives them a little bit of flexibility with regard to cash flow early in their year. But more than that, I mean, we, the Board of Finance of Middlefield and Mr. Yarmartino in particular, has argued that surpluses should be given back to the taxpayers as soon as they can be accurately assessed and audited. Now that's a little bit problematic because the audits are always after the end of the year and all of our budgets go in before the end of the year. They're usually finalized, but you know, it is, to answer your question specifically, sorry to drag on, it is a common practice to do a year lag
I
in
see.
rolling over.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I did have one comment. You know, as a Board of Finance member, one of my priorities will almost always be to advocate for lower expenses and saving money where we can. However, I'll just make a comment for the record that this field house has been dragged on for probably the better part of a decade. I think it's way overdue, and it's an embarrassment for people to come to our district for graduations and sporting events to not have that. So just that's my comment, that I'm disappointed to see that cut one more time.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna say that I had you breaking up quite a bit, Michael.
Right.
I don't know if other people experienced that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did.
sorry. You want me to rant one more time, maybe with clarity?
Please.
So generally, I will, as a Board of Finance member, I will almost always advocate for lower expenses and spending less whenever we can. But I think it is a project that's been put on the table and taken off the table quite a number of times over the course of a decade or so. And frankly, it's an embarrassment to our towns to not have adequate rest facilities. That's my biggest concern, the rest facilities for people, elderly folks attending graduation or sporting events. So I'm disappointed to see it removed from the budget once more, even though I suppose it's helping us get our expenses lower.
It is a topic that has quite polar advocates. And you know, I think it's appropriate for you, if you feel right, to add your voice to this topic through the Board of Ed public hearing medium that they have, Mike. They're using, much like we are using, a new town email to solicit comments. They're using Bob Moore's RSD13 email to solicit public comments. And I think that the discussion will actually continue on the field house into the next meeting. So it may be worthwhile for you to voice your point of view.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could jump in, Jim, for a second. Just,
Sure, Ed.
I think the field house, regarding the field house, yeah, it has gone on for too long, and I've been involved with that for the last 3 years, back and forth, and it would be, it's a $120,000 item, and I'm going to and lend my support to the Board of Ed to include it in this year's budget. Another item came up today. You know, as you know, or some of you may be aware, the governor issued an executive order that said that the school district had to honor their transportation contracts. Even so, when the case of RSD 13, they weren't contractually obligated to pay the bus company if services were not provided. However, the governor's executive order required that. From what I understand now is that the intention was, when that order went out, that the state would be reimbursing the school districts for those funds. So I just want to throw that out there. And we're looking, they are renegotiating the contract. And I think at one point, the business manager thought, you know, maybe they could shave 10% off or something. And I think I had mentioned a much larger percentage off. And I don't know where they are in the negotiations because we're not a part of that. But if they do get reimbursed, it's going to be a substantial amount of money. I would say they were looking at 400,000. So even if you look at, they renegotiate the contract to take out some overhead items and this, that, and the other thing. If it's 75%, it could be 300,000. If it's 50%, it's 200,000. So I'm just throwing that out there. The question is when they would receive the money. It may not happen in this fiscal year, but it could certainly happen next year. Also, the federal stimulus that came through, there is funds in there. The state of Connecticut getting $1.4 billion, and some of that has to be allocated to education purposes. For example, for elementary and secondary school, there's, according to the federal stimulus, they're required to spend $111 million toward education. So that number something should come to us. We as small towns, we're going to be advocating that we get a cut of this action, that it doesn't all go into the localities, but $111 million is a substantial amount of money. So I think at some point the schools are going to be receiving some reimbursement, and I think it might revolve around some of the e-learning that's going on, and so on and so forth. So we'll see how that all evolves. It's up to a year to disperse this funds. The state has up to a year. So we may not see this money till well into next fiscal year, but I just want to let you know there's being money put out on the street specifically that would impact our school district's finances.
Ed, I have a comment and a question. The comment is that in the $616,000 that of surplus that the school board applied, they used a 20% of their current bus contract, so that was $80,000. So it was a modest amount, but they mentioned last night that it was also very similar to what many school districts. There is some spread, but that was what many school districts are actually counting on as they think about their budget and surplus. So that's a comment about where they are right now. My question is, with this $111 million of federal aid, are there any guidelines to how that is spent, or is it likely that the state, my first reaction listening to you was that the state could likely just wait and apply that to next year's ECS.
That could very well be. Recipients may use funds for a wide range of activities and purposes. So it really, whatever the state education agency needs to meet emergency needs as it determines to address issues responding to the coronavirus. Well, there's a lot of things that could, apply to the coronavirus. So it's really like a lot of things that come from the federal government. It's all about interpretation and what you want to argue over. I would say I didn't hear about that 20% on the bus contract, but that sounds reasonable. But the money that the state is saying that they'll reimburse is the $400,000 minus the 20%. So that would be that amount that the state would be reimbursing. And I was shocked to hear that today. There was some emails on it. So I hope if it's true, it's going to be very beneficial to the school district. But we'll see how that unfolds. Once again, this might be one of these things that isn't going to happen for a long time. But hopefully the school district does get that reimbursement. We'll see what happens.
Any other comments about the school district budget and its implication on ours?
Well, the only thing I want to say is that the 616,000 is really unprecedented for the school to anticipate a surplus and apply it to the budget. And that money, that's a one-shot deal. So it won't be there come next year. And that's a big deal. So they're just moving the timing of when that money gets applied. Certainly it helps the towns out this year, but there's nothing in the bank to balance their budget going forward. So it's a one-shot, it's really a one-shot deal.
And that's not quite true, Al. There's nothing in the bank. There's 67 from this year, and there is multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars from last year. And that does have the opportunity to be applied, but it won't be, to your point, I agree, it won't be any $600,000.
Correct.
And so we're facing that headwind as we anticipate discussing the school budget next year.
Right, right.
Okay, but with that, why don't we move on? The next item was sort of a general discussion of intent with regard to mill rate. And I'd like to share another screen with you if I might. And this is the, whoops, that's the wrong screen. I apologize. Sorry. Let's try one more time. Okay, let's try this one. I just share the same screen? Yes. I'm sorry, folks.
Never apologize. You still have a better command of this than we would, so we'll never tell you we'll never tell you you're not doing a good job.
Okay, so so what you're looking at is the the working copy. I mean, I guess I can move it down just, well, maybe not. I'm sorry. You're looking at the working copy we have for our own Board of Finance of a spreadsheet that includes all of the different revenues and expenses and the capital. This is our multi-year spreadsheet where we have many years recorded of each individual line item. And you can see from the page here, this actually is showing some of the past years in terms of mill rate computation. And what I wanted to point out is that I have this spreadsheet working live so that it will give us, as we anticipate or make changes or even consider changes, it will give us right here the effective mill rate as a result of those changes. Now, let me give you just two examples. We're using right up here a 97.5% collection rate. You'll recall that Ed's proposal to us was back in February before all this started, and it was at 99.5, which was similar to what high numbers that we'd used before. Al had suggested perhaps there would be some issues with collection, and so I put in a 97.5, and you'll see with other changes we'll talk about a little bit, it gives us currently a mill rate very close to, but actually 1/100th of a point higher than what Ed proposed back in February. Okay. Now let me just show the sensitivity analysis on a couple things. So let's move this up to 98% collection rate, all right? And we'll go from 32.3 to 32.13.
Okay.
So we're down 17/100ths of a mil by going up that 0.5% in collection rate. Okay, now my point isn't that either of those collection rates is right. I just wanted to share with you that we have this kind of a tool available to us to look at what the sensitivity of the mill rate is.
Okay.
Let me put that back at 97.5. The first selectman proposed a mill rate in his budget of 32.29. Like I say, with changes that really date through this afternoon that we'll talk about, our mill rate currently is 32.3. So it's a little just, it's a smidge higher than what first selectman presented. And I guess I wanted to have a discussion about what would be the intention that the Board of Finance members would have with regard to trying to achieve a mill rate. Do we want to meet this? Do we want to be below it? Is it okay to be above it if changes have happened? And just one further fact, one mill is $400,000. So to move this by 0.1, we have to move our expenses by $40,000.
All right, so Jim,
Mhm.
all right, and this is with what the budget was originally thought, what it was going to be for the school?
This one has the old school numbers in. This one has the new school numbers in.
That's what I wanted to ask. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
this is up to date as of this afternoon.
Okay,
with
so all the changes and the things that we know about as of now, that's the most accurate.
Well, that's what they add up to, correct?
Okay.
And, again, I mean, if it's a reasonable discussion, maybe it's not reasonable, but I thought, do we want to meet this? Is it okay to be a little bit above it because new stuff has happened, or do we want to try to be below it? What's the sense of the members?
All right.
So my thoughts on this are that the kind of my philosophy, again, acknowledging my junior position here, but that the last year's mill rate is like a hard stop. That's like a hard ceiling. We absolutely, in my opinion, have to be below that. I think we've made a conservative, prudent and conservative estimate of our collections. And we could have left it at 99.5 because that's where it's been for a while, and we're kind of used to that. So I think we've taken the prudent and responsible step of being more conservative on that. And with all other factors as they are, that still puts us at a 32.3. So like you said, a smidge above First Selectman's proposal, but to me, we're under that hard ceiling. We're headed in the right direction. We're being conservative about our assumptions, and we're very close to what the First Selectman said. So I'm very comfortable. My first time through this process, that looks really good to me.
Jim, I agree with Mike. I think we've done work to get us to this point. There's going to be changes as we move along, but I think we've made a good faith effort, as Mike suggested, to be conservative in our tax collection. So I don't think it has to be below or equal to the First Selectman's proposal. I think it's going to change, and that should be expected. So, but I agree. I think since it's below our previous mill rate, I'm fine with it where it is.
Yeah, I am too. I would say though that when we roll it out, we need to make sure people understand that the First Selectman's is based upon the higher rate of collection. So if we were going by his rate of collection, it would have been what you would, much lower. So that people understand that we're not comparing, it's like comparing fruit, but they're like apple and orange because we're using a different collection rate, which we are taking into consideration being fiscally responsible, that people may have difficulty because of the way the economy is right now for people who are out of work or whatever. So as long as we can get that across to people, I'm okay with, you know, with the way it is, because I think we've done a good job. And if things change, I mean, we had some questions about stuff which we haven't had answered yet. I don't know if that's also included in what you've done. You know, I still think we're doing pretty good.
Well, we do, I mean, we do have one other tool at our disposal that we can use that has a pretty big sensitivity factor, and that's the use of the undesignated fund contribution. Each year we apply that, and Al will talk a little bit more about his anticipated surplus and what that does to our undesignated fund as a % of total expenses. And so that's one other thing that downstream, as we further consider finalizing our thoughts, we do have, you know, it's a reasonably good size sensitivity area for us.
Okay, so if we know what our percentages are, if we're way over what our normal percentage should be, then I you know, we'd have to take that in consideration
Right.
too, and that might lower where we are. I know that we had questions about the redoing the website, and we had questions about like the one that you did for that's the most current. Does that include taking out, because there was stuff in the last budget that we had that they decided they weren't going to do it and use it. I think, oh God, I can't think of what it is right now, but it was in one of the, it had to do with something to do with land use,
How do you do it permitting
the
software?
software or
That's what
something.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all of those changes very shortly. In
Right.
fact, you know, we'll go into them right away.
Okay,
Al
so,
will describe that, and that'll be one of the things that comes up in terms of verifying changes that we have made or identifying changes that are being suggested by Ed and or Al. I wanted to mention we have been joined by Marianne Corona. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank you.
So we're about halfway down our agenda, and we'll be opening up once again for public hearing or for public comment towards the end of our discussion. But we're in the process of starting a discussion of changes that are being suggested or that have already been suggested to really the expenses, the capital revenues, and an estimate of surplus. So with that, let me stop the sharing of this sensitivity analysis and go to the surplus and let Al begin discussion of that. Let me find it here first. For some reason, my machine isn't taking screen share.
it's not playing well with others?
Yeah, it's not playing well with others.
It's practicing social distancing.
Okay, I'll do it the old-fashioned way. So Al, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, what I did along with Ed over. Oh,
So Al, I'm sorry. I muted you. No,
Okay.
please repeat.
Okay, over the past few days, I went line by line and analyzed the revenues and the expenses, and gave a preliminary draft to Ed to review to make sure I wasn't missing anything, and we both tweaked it. And this is where we think we're going to come out at the end of June of this year. We started with the budgeted revenues, the 16,708,305, which includes the 243,205 for the LED lighting. So it's the original budget plus the surplus appropriation.
Gotcha.
I back out the use of surplus because that's not real revenue in the current year. So that comes out. Right now, Ann is at about 205,000 above the budgeted revenues with 3 months to go. So I did a wild guess and said we're going to be over budget on the tax collections by 250,000.
Okay.
That could be more or less. Likely it will be a bit more, but we'll have to see. You know, given what's going on, it's hard to tell what's going to be coming in. The DUI grant was eliminated back in, I think, October 1. So that money is not going to be realized. Police overtime charges, those are basically reimbursements from Youth and Family Services. I don't see that. I talked to Betsy earlier in the budget process, and they have paid what they're going to pay. So those overtime charges are not going to be reimbursed. Building and land use fees looks like they're going to be under budget, and that, again, that's strictly an estimate, 15,000. Lake Besic, typically Lake Besic reimburses us two things. They reimburse us for the debt, and they reimburse us for an administrative fee. I took out the administrative fee, saying for the time being, they don't need to reimburse the town for the cost of just running that function. The summer camp payroll, $21,000 less, only because the payroll was less for the current year. And the LED lighting is subject to a rebate of approximately $40,000 that was not budgeted. So that's an increase in the revenue, and that should be received by the end of the year. So on the revenue side, we're going to have a contribution to the surplus of $21,755. On the expense side, again, we went line by line, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The town planner came on later than we expected, so that's going to be a reduction of 24,000. The town council and labor council looks like it's going to be under by 5. The consultant, 1652. IT support is going to require a little bit of additional funding, so that's an increase in expenses. Let's see, hard to follow what's going around now. Town website's going to be under budget. Telephone, copier, and postage is going to will need an additional $5,000, I'm guessing. Street lighting, as a result of the LED contribution, I'm estimating going to be a $10,000 reduction. The facilities manager didn't start until February 1st, so that's an $8,148 reduction. The town vehicle fuel is going to come in under budget, primarily because of the cost of the fuel. The election expenses, I reduced by 6,000 because there's not going to be a presidential primary in this fiscal year, and there's not going to be a school referendum.
Okay, but there is going to be a primary, but it's not going to be separate presidential.
It's going to be in August.
Right, which
So
will be the
that-
next fiscal year. Okay.
Correct. Employee benefits, initially, we thought there might be a reduction there, but that's going to come in flat. The assessor property tax system upgrade, that was, if you recall, we split that. We had a $7,000 fee, and the vendor agreed to bill half of it in last fiscal year and half of it in this fiscal year. That was not anticipated. So that's the $3,500. And we've talked about that before. The assessor GIS system, there were two components there. One was $5,000 for the initial phase, and we're in the second phase now, which was an additional $12,500. Public Works storm-related expenses, Public Works payroll, we're guessing is going to be a decrease of $60,000. Public Works storm-related expenses, which is primarily salt, is going to be under by $40,000. Overtime is going to be down by $13,000. Road maintenance, we're going to be short. Again, this is a guess, by $15,000. Same thing with garage expenses. Animal control, really haven't had much in the way of expenses there, so we're reducing that by $1,000. One of the biggest items is the police payroll, and that was a change in the way when we put the budget together. The state of Connecticut gives us an actual budget number for that. During the first 3 or 4 months of the fiscal year, they came out with a revised number due to a change in the way that the funding of the police retirement was calculated. The town's no longer on the hook for a significant portion of the police retirement, and that was a $44,000 reduction in the police payroll budget. The fire department appreciation night, I believe, is canceled, so that's $6,000. The emergency management, again, that's a guess that we're going to be over by $5,000. We're going to need additional funding just for purchasing the supplies and replenishing the limited stock that we had. Inland wetlands, we talked about this at the last meeting. My guess is we're going to be over probably a little less than the 20,000. And that's due to various applications and violations that we're dealing with. The operating contingency and the staff coverage contingency will not be used because we have other underexpended line items that we have money to transfer from. So on the expense side, it looks like the contribution to surplus will be $217,000 for a total budget surplus for the current year of roughly $240,000. The footnote there, footnote A, the 1.43% that is the surplus contribution for the current year as a percentage of total current year budgeted expenditures. So we drop down, we take the audited fund balance at the end of last year in total. We subtract from that the previous year's encumbrances, and that's really just an accounting function. Fund balance, the encumbrance amount are expenses that we paid this year that related to the previous year. And we take out the appropriation for the LED street lights because that was a town meeting reduction in undesignated fund balance. So our projected fund balance is going to be $3,108,843, which, again, if you look at the footnote, as a percentage of the June 30 fund balance, is 18.49%.
Okay.
Now, the selectmen's budget has taken 200,000 of that and used it to balance the current year proposed budget.
Al, let me interrupt.
Yep.
The 3108 is 18% of the projected fiscal 21 expenses.
I don't have the formula in front of me,
No,
but.
but well, that's correct. I mean, but
Okay, yes.
I mean,
Oh,
you
that's,
can actually see it right here.
yes,
And you know, so that's our fund balance as a percent of expenses before we apply the 200,000
correct.
to next year's budget.
No, excuse me, no. Sorry, that's not correct. This is a percentage based on budgeted expenditures for the current fiscal year. That's expressed percentage, not expenses, but budgeted, okay? Which is a
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just want to make it clear.
I should have said that.
It
That's
does change the percentage if you do it.
right.
So if you look at footnote B, that's the appropriate footnote for that.
Right.
And as we, the goal of the Board of Finance is to have it undesignated of between 12 and 17%. When we take the 200,000 out, that gets us down to 17.3%. So there's still some flexibility there to get that down to the cap or the max that the Board of Finance uses as a guide. So we certainly can take a little bit more out of surplus and achieve our goal of 17%.
And you'll notice, Al and Ed, that I actually did that calculation.
Right.
So I looked at 17% and it says that there could be even up to $50,000 more applied, and we would still be at the 17%, which was the upper limit of our policy.
Right.
Okay, so does this include what you're talking about that Ann already has as ahead of the game?
Yeah, we start with as of the end of March, Ann was, I'm going to say, roughly $205,000 to the good.
Okay, and you're expecting 250
Correct.
potentially. Okay,
Because
so
we
that
have
includes all that. Okay.
we have three more months of collections, and that 250, it could be more, it could be less. It's likely it will be more.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And again, the 17% or the 17.3% reflects the use of fund balance to purchase the LED streetlights. So even with that major expenditure, we're still at a good place.
Can I ask where do we get that guidance? I remember looking at this in the fall, and I believe it was the guidance was that we were supposed to have roughly 15%, as I recall, in the undesignated fund balance. Is that number being increased over time, and who provides that guidance to us? I think that's the state, right?
Well, the Office of Policy and Management uses a general guide that they would like towns to, the goal is 15%.
Mm-hmm.
The Board of Finance, I believe, and Jim can probably enlighten us on that, but I believe that the Board of Finance, as state funding has been diminished, we would want to be at the higher end. So the range that was set from, we never want to go below 12, and we don't want to do our best not to go above 17. And the 2% difference between the 15 and the 17 is in recognition that we don't know we've had in previous years where the state has come in at the end of the fiscal year and just made, across the board reductions in state funding. So the extra 2% gives us some added assurance that we're able to cover that.
Yeah, it's really cautionary. It was, we passed it, Michael, as a policy statement about a year and a half ago. And we, as Al said, we took our upper limit up above the recommended midpoint that CCM and other people had said to us at 15%, just because of being cautious and in a state that has funding issues. And we were anticipating funding issues into the future and possible cuts in ECS or possible cuts in other revenue. And so this undesignated fund is basically our rainy day fund, right, in case we get shorted on some revenue, or alternatively, if we have a crisis come up in town where we need extra funding. So that's my sort of recollection in terms of the intention for the range, 12 really being pretty low and 17 being a little above the 15 because of pure conservatism.
Okay, good.
And in our policy, we also talked about how if we had to draw down lower, what we would do to bring it up. And also too, this, because we moved from like having nothing pretty much at one point and built up the capital, we built up the undesignated, and that has also afforded us the ability to be able to do the LED lights and take that opportunity that will show over time a reduction in expenses. If we didn't have that within the range that we do, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
So if I could add just one thing, the recommendation for surpluses were, or undesignated funds 5 years ago were probably in the range of maybe 8 to 10%. When the state got into its financial crunch 4 or 5 years ago, the recommendation from bonding agencies, underwriters, was that they wanted to see now have towns to have larger undesignated funds in order to have a better position in the bond market borrowing money. Now, albeit we don't do that. We don't borrow. Okay, so but someday we may. But that was a general recommendation, given the lousy and still very lousy financial situation in the state of Connecticut. And CCM, their analysts came out with that recommendation about 4 years ago, that we up it up to 15%. And the Board of Finance followed along with a policy to that end.
Now, one thing I want to point out that makes this the final 3 lines of this schedule misleading is the budgeted expenditures, the 16,814, are from the selectmen's budget. Those expenditures have gone down 300,000 due to the change in the school. I probably should have shown that side by side with the budget as it stands today. The total expenses are 16,518,000, which changes that percentage up to 18.8. So there's plenty of fund balance there to play with, is what I'm saying.
Yep. Okay. So we've got latitude.
Jim, can I ask you a quick question?
Certainly.
Have we received our TAR money yet?
We have not.
Oh, God.
And we have not.
Well, the state of Connecticut, the bond, The Governor's Bond Commission met last week, and they did approve all the bonding. And the latest communication I have is that we should be receiving not only our TAR funds, but our municipal projects grant and our LoCIP funding probably within a couple of weeks. They're going to expedite it out the door as soon as possible.
Okay.
So far,
Okay, good.
but it has gone through the bond commission, so it is done.
Oh, good.
We'll get
Okay.
money. Yep.
Yeah, no, I was just asking because that's, a fine example of why to keep fund balances higher, because that money should have been in our coffers
A while ago.
last year, like 6 months ago.
Well, the governor decided to use it to hold it as hostage for tolls. So, we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, I mean, just to let you know, on the state revenue side, right now, they have paid us less than 50% of what we have in our budget. We still are owed the ECS money, which
Right.
typically comes in April. We haven't gotten it yet, and that's $846,000. The municipal projects grant is $249,000. That typically comes literally the last week of the fiscal year. So while we fully expect to get all that money, we don't have it yet.
There is a strong push. There's been a lot of talk and conversation, and in fact, with our governor, I was on a conference call with the governor yesterday regarding coronavirus. But one of the questions from one of my colleagues, CEOs in another town, was that, can you please accelerate these payments, because the state has been so late in the payments. Many towns have deferred projects, and they've still got 2 months left in this fiscal year. So if they get the cash now, they might be able to push these projects out the door before the end of the fiscal year. So there was I think Martin Heft from OPM was on the call. He said he was going to look into it. So and said that he would try to get it out. He's probably one of the most straight shooters up there, because he was the former first selectman of Chester. So I know he's got the interest of our municipalities, particularly the small municipalities, at heart. So we'll see what happens.
So any final questions for Al with regard to surplus projection? All good. Then we'll move, if I can, if I can draw this one up, to capital analysis. Okay, we'll do it a different way. Okay, Al, can you see the screen?
I can.
Okay, and why don't you just verbally guide me down the categories? Again, these are capital. What you're looking at is the balance and selectmen proposal here. Changes that we had already made, changes that Al and Ed are suggesting as of today to become the new Board of Finance proposal and the new balance. So that's the categories on the in the columns.
Yeah, the column that says balance 4220 is just really to give you an update as to where the available balance is as of today.
Okay.
That reflects all expenditures, because the one prior was, a little over a month ago. It should say at the top of there, it should say April 20th, not April 2nd, but my mistake. So you can see there has been some change in like the accounting software. There were some consulting fees that were put in there. So the balance is $8,000. But just to give you a more current picture of where we stand. The LED,
Okay.
anything in blue is something that Ed and I have proposed as a change to the original selectmen's proposal. So the LED lighting conversion, we have a quote. It's a two-part project. Part of it is converting all the lighting in town hall to LED, and that's just it doesn't include replacement of the physical fixture, but it's all of the lights and the lighting itself. That is $52.91, and these are subject to relatively small rebates, but this is the gross cost, the $52.91. And if you drop down to the community center, you'll see the second, it's one proposal, but the upper level lighting LED conversion was $69.75. And again, that is before any possible rebate.
And both of those are proposed for fiscal 21.
Correct.
Yes, and the rebate, we're anticipated a rebate of about $1,800 on those projects. If you'd like me to elaborate, I'll give you 1 minute on both of those. If you want, if you don't want, we can move forward.
I'll take.
You want to take 1 minute? Okay. So since I got into office, I've been working on this project, and the quotes have ranged anywhere from to upgrade our lighting using this program through the utility company, where you get a company come in, they upgrade the lights, they change things around, and then you pay for it through your electric bill. Well, the payback, it was ridiculous what they wanted to do the job. Okay, I think this building here was close to $15,000 or $16,000, the town hall. The payback would have been 15 years. It was the community center was $35,000. So
That's
this
crazy.
is ridiculous. Why spend what are we spending all this money for? It's ridiculous. Although we didn't have to put any money up front because it would have been paid through our electric bill. So I looked at alternatives, and this is the alternative, is where we put out our money and we get a much better, we get as good of a product. We don't have to do the specs according to Eversource, which is, of course, they're trying to requiring us to replace all the lighting fixtures. There's nothing wrong with our lighting fixtures. All we need to do is to change the internals. The paybacks are, paybacks are for the town hall 4.8 years, and the community center's 3.7 years.
Okay, so we're putting it out, but we're gonna get it back.
And
Okay.
we will also we'll have all new lighting internals. So we'll also there is a savings on maintenance because we're always having to have an electrician come in and work on these fixtures because ballast burn out, this, that, and the other thing, and that's probably $1,500 a year worth of maintenance. And of course, as they get older, they're going to require more maintenance. So that's the proposal on that. It's taken a long time to put it together because to get people to give you good estimates, it takes time, it takes energy. Unfortunately, given the reason it's all come together at this point is because of the coronavirus, people don't have work, so they were able to put a little effort into giving us a good quote on this. So that's how that's happened. That's my 1 minute. I think I took 2.
That's adequate.
The next item under the community center is the access control system. And if Ed doesn't mind, he is much more knowledgeable about what we're trying to do there. So he can pick up that tab.
Okay, so we have 70 keys for that building on the street.
Wow.
We have a problem on many, many nights. I mean, when I have a meeting down there, I check all the doors, and I would say half the time I find a door unlocked.
Wow.
So more recently, the building's been closed to the public, and one weekend, a door was left open. And I don't mean unlocked, but it was left open. Somebody opened the door and blocked it. They left it open for who knows how, for days. So, or at least a day. It was discovered and closed. We do not have a custodian on duty, okay? We have no idea if the building is properly secured at night or not. Yes, our troopers will check it, this, that, and the other thing, but it's not a very good system. If somebody wants to use the building, we give them a key, albeit now I think we charge a $20 deposit on a key. The key costs us $15 to make because it's a key that's you cannot reproduce without without authorization. But we keep fairly good control of who has the keys. But the problem is we have no control of when those people are using the keys. And since I've been in office, I have said we've got to do something better down there in that building with access control. And once again, I worked with somebody on putting together a plan of creating a computerized digital access control system for the building. And that would be something to the effect, it can work in various different ways, but basically you can have a fob or something that looks like a credit card to gain access to the building. That may only give certain people certain times when they can get in the building. For example, if the Board of Finance has a meeting like tonight, the chairman would have access to the building, but he would only have access to the building, let's say from 6:30 or 6 o'clock forward. And the building would be unlocked to allow people to access the building during several hours. And then the doors will lock. Nobody has to use a key or anything to that effect. Durham has a system like that in their town hall. And when I saw their system, I said, boy, we could certainly use that in our community center. So this is a proposal to install a digital access system to the building. We do have, on occasion, we have town staff that may be by themselves in the building. And, you know, I do instruct our staff to go around, make sure if you're going to be alone in the building, you lock all the doors, but you got to go around, you got to check all the doors. That requires going downstairs to the lower level and so on. So the access control will also, if the plan works as according that we're thinking about, is that we'll even have limit access to different levels of the building. So if you're on the lower level, if you're not authorized to go to the upper level, you'll be prevented from going to the upper level. We may even try to see if we can prevent upper level from going to the lower level, but I'm less concerned about that because the lower level, we have a lot of big events down there. You can have 165 people in the auditorium, everybody on the lower level, and not allow people to drift upstairs to the upper level without authorization. So this is a part of the access control for the building. We have had vandalism in the building, and this would help address that problem as well. So it's an expensive proposition, but I think it's it's something that we need, and I think it would enhance the security of the building itself. It would enhance security for our town employees, which I'm very concerned about. And I think it would make it a much easier system than having to hand out keys and collecting security deposits and all this other nonsense. Any questions?
Nope, I like it.
I'm sorry, I have one question. I mean, it's certainly the need for an improvement is there. Did you look, or is there a way to understand the sensitivity analysis for different options? I mean, this sounds to me as though you're suggesting one very good option with a number of features. It's also very expensive. You know, are there other options at other prices? Did you look at any of that?
Well, one option could be that we have a custodian in the building whenever the building is being used. And that would be a labor cost. That would probably require us to hire an additional employee. And my thought on that would be it could be up to, 15 hours, maybe 20 hours a week. And that would be and then we'd also have to have coverage for that individual when that individual could not be on duty, either because of illness, sickness, or vacation. And it would likely wind up becoming a union position. And at the very least, we would probably look at somewhere in the neighborhood of over $18,000 a year to do that.
Yeah, no, I guess I was thinking, Ed, more about other electronic options rather than just, the one that
Well,
you looked at.
there's different options, yes. There's different brands. We have not, we've only explored one system. And I believe that is this, what we looked at is a system manufactured by Sargent, which is a well-known hardware manufacturer. And there are other systems out there that might be done more cheaply. But I would suggest that this is probably one of the I shouldn't say high price, but perhaps a premium price system. So the exact system we put in, I cannot say at this point, but I would believe that if this Sargent is probably one of the more expensive systems that we would install that would be available. There may be something less expensive out there. There's a lot of labor involved in this. The hardware part of it is one factor, like everything else, it's hardware plus labor. So
I have a,
of course, the nature of it, whether it be a fob or whether it be a credit card, it would be digitally based. For example, right now, sitting in my office here in Town Hall, I could lock that building down by simply either A, calling a phone number and entering a code, or going online, either on my smartphone or on the computer, and I could lock the building down. I could also open the building up. For example, if Jim arrived for this meeting and said, I forgot my card or forgot my fob to get in the building, what am I going to do? I could simply go to my smartphone and unlock the door for him. Very
I was
simple.
just going to ask that.
The idea of the technology. There are many manufacturers, and I'm sure there's different, different pricing for various vendors on this.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question, Jim.
Yes, no, that would.
Yeah, the exact, there are various things. We can also have keypads where you'd enter in a key code.
Right.
That's another option. But I think the final, it's going to require some more time to decide exactly what we do install, but I think the funding would be adequate to cover various scenarios.
Okay.
Okay.
So at this point, you're saying that the funding wouldn't exceed what you have in here.
That's correct.
Okay. It could be less, but it's not going to be.
The goal would be to make it, try to see if we could do it a little less or.
Okay.
And I have a question about the community center, if I can ask this. I know that I saw on Facebook they got some new blinds in the room that the Lions always meet in, which is the senior room.
Yes.
Is there somewhere in this budget where we're going to, under windows and doors or somewhere, are we replacing the rest of the blinds?
No, we are. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, there is a line item there. We have a $15,000 for interior shades, miscellaneous interior work shades, and stage curtain.
There you go.
Okay. So we are going to replace some of the other windows. I mean, I know as someone that
We're not doing the whole building wholesale. We're going to do rooms probably as needed. Our next step is to do we might do the historical. We probably do the historical society because the room's been totally renovated, and also once the land use office, the plastering work has been done. It's going to be painted. Once that's done, we're going to put shades up in that room as well. And eventually, we need to replace the shades in the large meeting rooms. But
Right.
after they get plastered and painted, so hopefully that'll happen over the next several months, and we'll be replacing those as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Al?
Alrighty, as you look at again, the community center, keep in mind that the balance with the Board of Finance proposal does not contemplate the spending through April 20th, which is the first, the entire column that is highlighted blue. So if you look down to the community center, where is it? The interior major, bathrooms and kitchens. I believe that the balance there is only $450. I believe that is where the plastering and the majority of the painting has gone into. Maybe some of that should have gone in onto the interior paint line item, but you can see we spent roughly $11,000 painting and plastering the community center. So the balance, if the budget was passed as approved, the extreme right-hand column, the balance would not be 24,000, it would be 12,450, because there has been a significant expenditure amount for that line item. You can see at the end of September, end of February, we had $12,000 as a balance in that account. We only have 450 in there now.
Right. Okay.
Okay, because we have done a lot of work on the community center. And again, some of that may have gone into the interior paint line item right above it, but that basically would have been zeroed out. So the balance with the Board of Finance proposal is a bit misleading.
Well, the main question is, are you and Ed content with the amount in the proposal? Because the balance is going to change up to June 30th.
That's correct.
But the point is are you, if you are comfortable with the 12 in addition as it anticipates next year, or, you know, or I mean, if it's too much, we should reduce it. Or if we should be aiming at some other target for 2024. You know, we can change the balances all the way up to probably the public hearing and even after. But we need to understand that we have the right number in terms of a proposal to add to whatever our balance is.
There were a couple,
give certainly enough for next year.
yeah, there's a couple line items that are like that. And Ed and I will have to talk about that if we, you know, what the plan is as far as work going forward. Again, the original budget there was 60,000, and we spent a considerable amount this fiscal year. So maybe that number gets reduced a bit, but Ed and I will have to.
Yeah, I think there's just, you understand, there's a single account number for the community center, 20-17-9145.
Right.
So the allocations in this spreadsheet, when an invoice is charged against the line item, it may not get into the correct line item in this spreadsheet. So
Correct.
to straighten that out a little bit. We have accelerated. One thing that has happened, and you know, I was waiting for some figures where we're at, but we have accelerated some work in the community center because of the fact that the building is not open to the public. It is a mess down there right now because we're able to empty out rooms and get a lot of work done, and also we're able to get our hands on vendors to come in and do work for us because they're looking for work. We have a little bit of an opportunity here to do work in our community center that we were really having logistical problems figuring out how we were going to do it with the building open. And then the building suddenly became closed, and we really started going to town the past 30 days. So we will straighten those, look at those numbers. Al and I will look at those numbers, and if we have to make any adjustments, Al will advise the Board of Finance.
Right. Yeah, because the Historical Society there was a fair amount of work done in that room. Between the plastering and painting, there's been a lot of work done in the community center. So
yeah, we found out with the plastering really got out crazy because we found a lot of problems. We had a section of the ceiling in the land use office collapse because of plaster damage, and so we're getting everything repaired, and that's the good news. And we have an opportunity because the building isn't occupied that we can really just. It's very difficult to do work when it's being used on a daily and nightly basis. So anyway, we'll provide some more information to the Board of Finance on that. If we have to adjust any of those line items, we'll get back to you, okay?
That would be good. Why don't we move along? We've got quite a bit more to take a look at.
yep, we'll go pretty quick. If we drop down to under central services, computer system upgrade, that's exactly the same thing. The balance has gone more negative for the current fiscal year, and there will continue to be some minor expenses going forward. You know, if we buy a monitor or we do some cable work, I believe we did some IT work at the firehouse that was in that $1,000 change from the 6530 to the 7541. But again, if we put the original proposal in, that got us back to our 5, which is kind of our baseline. That number is gonna, we will have to put in a add change to that line item, which will be an increase. Because we want to keep that at least $5,000. Okay, so the 11,530 proposed allocation will go up.
Okay.
So that's just something, and again, we'll try to figure out what that might be, and that'll be a revision.
Yeah, I apologize for these moving targets, but the IT work, because of our upgrade to unexpected that we upgraded to Windows 10, caused a lot of issues, and we still have, I think, another computer to replace this fiscal year. And also, the other item with the community center was the fact that it was empty, and we're able to accelerate some of the work that we had planned on the building. So, apologize for moving targets here, so to speak.
And actually, this exercise is good, because had we continued with the February 28th balance, which is how we've done it in the past, we would not have known that we were going to, our goal balance would not have been achieved. So this updating through today was very helpful.
Okay.
If we drop down to the building and land use, you can see we reduced the permitting software by the $20,000, which frees up $17,000 in the Board of Finance proposal. That project we're just not going to go forward with that.
Right.
Then we go down to Park and Rec, which is quite a ways down the page. The poison ivy, I believe we have gotten an updated estimate on that, and the cost is going to be roughly $3,500. And I think Ken and Ed came up with that in the past week or two. So
That's another item that we've been working on for 3 years, and we finally got someone to work. And that's the proposal, the pricing proposal on the work. So,
Right.
Once again, the coronavirus is allowing us some opportunity not only to spend more, to really get people to come in and look at these jobs for us. So that's why that is a kind of a late change there.
And I believe that is it for capitals.
All right, what about the town website? We had asked questions about that.
The town website, I discussed that with Ed, the $15,000 in there
Right,
was based on a project, and Ed can elaborate, but it was based on a project that was done at the River Cog. And that really that's purely an estimate. You know, we haven't sat down and defined exactly what we wanted to do. I know Jim said he'd like to have a workable search feature in that. But we have not sat down with either Peg Schofield or any other vendor to see what the real cost is. It's just an estimate based on a similar project at the River Cog.
So
Okay.
my thing on that is that we would, if the Board of Finance wants to, agrees to fund this, is that would allow us to go forward, put together a request for proposals, an outline of what we want, and put it out on the street and come in with some hard numbers. I don't think the 15,000 is going to do it, but then we could fund the additional balance in our next fiscal year. So the project, this would be a start of it. And if we have to add some funds to it in next fiscal year 22, then we could add the funds in fiscal year 22 and execute the project.
Yeah, I know that Mike pointed out, you know, the $15,000, that could be incredibly low, or it can be excessive. It really depends on what are we looking to achieve, and we need to define that. So,
right.
Just to give you an idea, I think our current website, I believe, was in excess of $10,000. So.
So the net of these changes today is an additional $9,000 in capital.
correct.
Recent changes,
So
but we
we're
did
even
have,
higher than our,
but we did have that 17K off. So net, you know, we went from the selectmen's proposal of 903. We're actually $3,000 below what Ed originally
Right.
gave to us. You know,
okay,
before now we were a little bit lower, but with these additions, we are still $3,000 below what the first selectmen's proposal was relative to capital.
And that, again, that may change based on when Ed and I sit down and talk about the renovations at the community center and the computer upgrades. So it likely will go up a bit. But that's what we have right
so
now.
that means, okay, so you think it'll go up further than what the selectmen's original proposal is?
Correct.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Okay, so I think we asked clarification questions as we went. Can we move on to the general revenue and expenses?
Yep.
Yep. Let's see.
This is revenue we're showing.
Correct.
And the only one that's really changed is down here on sources of funds, or I'm sorry, interest.
No, I don't see that.
No, I still have capital fund analysis
Right.
up.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me try one more time.
Okay, got revenue.
Yeah, we changed the interest number. And my guess is that the fund balance number, we went down considerably on that. The rates are, my best guess is, are going to be far below 1% next year. We're getting roughly 1.5% for the year that we're in. So it's going to be a drop.
Okay.
But my guess is the amount that we take out of fund balance may increase to get us closer to the 17% goal. So that number is subject to change.
Okay.
So over to expenses.
Expenses, we'll do the same thing we did with the capitals. The changes that I've made are in yellow. And I try to have an explanation over on the comments section. So the workers' comp insurance, we received Kerma's formal quote after the selectmen's budget was prepared, so that's a $3,500 reduction. Payroll taxes went up a little bit. Our health insurance went down a little bit. Oop, got to scroll the other way. I'm sorry, under employee benefits. We received our final rate increase from Connecticut, and we were using a 9.5% estimate for the selectmen's budget, and that came in lower than that.
Okay.
I think it was, I want to say it was 8.8, but I don't quote me on that. So there was a reduction in health insurance of $3,000. The municipal employee pension, again, that's a reduction based on a reduction in the MRF contribution percentage. Again, we used the budget based on the proposal that we had the year before, which gave a 5-year rate projection. That rate decreased. So our contribution, and that came in after the budget was initially prepared. Now, my guess is that the municipal employee retirement plan is going to take a significant hit in investment income for the year that we're sitting in right now. So my guess is the rate will increase going forward.
Okay.
But the number in there is a hard number. Okay, let's see here. We got.
These are numbers for Public Works that we've already changed.
Yep.
On discussion with Jason.
Yep.
We had already moved this one up $3,000 and added the physicals to the sundry expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The same thing with the fire marshal's vehicle expense. If we put it in at 0, the line item would go away. So I suggested we put $1 in there just to keep the budget line item open. That's just a formality. The emergency management, given the situation with this coronavirus and the need to replenish supplies and food that would last for a long period of time, the increases there are the $48.50 for the shelter expenses, which is primarily the food and water. And then sundry expenses is going to be everything else you can think of: gowns, masks, anything that we need to get us to a point where we should be.
So we're actually over doubling, more than doubling the emergency management proposal.
Correct. And the supplies are, right now, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was coming home from work today, I stopped at the Mobile in Durham on Main Street. They had the N95 masks and the surgical masks for sale. The N95s were $8.99 a pop, and the surgical masks were $2.99 a pop. Typically, a surgical mask is about 25 cents.
And an N95 is about 53 cents.
So, and they were $8.99.
And my company couldn't buy them anywhere and have had them on order for 2 months. I actually sewed 75 of them for work 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
They couldn't find in Woodstock a mask anywhere.
So that's the situation there. We're hoping, hopefully over time, these costs, well, they definitely are going to go down. But
Well, if I could, yeah. So as far as shelter supplies, we had a lot of expired food and water, and so we need to replenish those supplies. The sundry expenses is basically PPE. So we do, and we still do have a supply of N95s, emergency management. This is in addition to whatever the fire department has, our EMS. I have been giving the equipment, the PPE, to the fire department. So what every emergency comes up with a learning. And the reason we have so many N95s is because 9/11 N95s were in short supply, and people felt, well, you got to have N95 masks. That's the thing you need. So as a result, we have about over 500 N95 masks. However, this state of emergency is causing us to realize that we need other equipment as well. And that's Tyvek suits, gowns, face masks, face shields,
goggles, all that stuff.
goggles.
Mhm.
We
Well,
cannot,
the N95 masks have to be fit tested. So it's just like not something you're going to give out to everybody.
that's correct. An N95 mask, if it is being used for the purpose that it's truly designed for, yes. So for example, our first responders are fit tested. Any EMS is fit tested, and so on. So they're not used. If somebody uses an N95 for construction and so on, yes, is it somewhat effective, but it's not 100% effective. Remember, for an individual, anyone that's online right on this Zoom call right now, and wearing an N95 mask is really not of any great use. Surgical masks are what is being required now to wear if in public, if you're close to people. That is
Yes, also the cloth ones too.
to protect me, to protect you from me, and when you
Yeah.
wear a mask, I am protected from you from spreading your germs to me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
The N95s are meant for first, people who are dealing with someone who is actually that they know to be ill or suspect to be ill, and they need a higher level of protection.
Yeah, they do the frontline workers, and then I've seen they've been doing disinfecting of certain suits and stuff like that, and had black lights. I mean, I'm not saying we would. This is in cities where they're much harder hit.
Yes. So the conclusion of this situation we're in now is that we need to make sure that we have, as a town, a decent supply on hand of personal protective equipment going forward. Another other thing that we're getting, which was already in the budget, but I attended a tabletop exercise with our emergency management director, and we teamed up with Laura Francis, the first select woman of Durham. We were a single team at a table of a large-scale emergency management event, and we're going through a scenario. I'll spare you the whole process, but it was a three-hour event, and our takeaway from it was we got to have cans. We need cans to fill up for diesel fuel, because there could be a situation where we would run out of fuel and we would need to go somewhere ourselves, maybe travel 100 miles, maybe travel 200 miles and fill up cans of diesel fuel and bring them back to town. So as a result of that, we're buying 10 5-gallon jerry cans for diesel oil to have on hand, because when there's an emergency, you can't find an empty can to buy. So that was a takeaway from that tabletop exercise. And so we're having a real life exercise here, and we're realizing the shortcomings of the supply chain. The state of Connecticut, they said they had all this equipment. Well, it was all old because they bought it all with federal money back after 9/11, and they never replenished it. They never replaced it. I got 500 or 600 N95 masks from the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security in the state of Connecticut, and they were expired. And the rubber bands that hold the mask to your face are all broken. So we are salvaging the masks by stapling on rubber bands. And I have sat in this office. I think I did 100 of them. I have some town staff working on that as well. So we're salvaging the masks, and they will be useful. But that's what we're doing, and we shouldn't be in a position like that. So we will. That's why we need to stock up. Now, as far as these line items are concerned, there will be FEMA reimbursement of some sort. Typically, FEMA will reimburse 75% of the emergency expenses. So these line items, I trust we will get some kind of reimbursement from FEMA on the equipment, up to 75%. On top of that, the state of Connecticut is receiving loads of money from the federal government, in addition to what I spoke about earlier. And as a town, as a municipality in the state of Connecticut, my colleagues in other towns, what we're looking for is to make sure that small towns like ours get some of this money, that it doesn't all get sucked up by the state of Connecticut, either by the state, or the state hands a lot of it over to the large municipalities in Connecticut, and the small municipalities like us get absolutely nothing. So we're thinking, I think the thought is that the state, we're going to be asking the state to give towns a grant, or a block grant, or whatever you want to call it, a chunk of money. So I suspect that many of these items here, these expenses, we're going to see some offsetting revenue. Can't tell you what that is, because nothing is finalized, but I suspect in FY21 we'll see some funding coming in to cover some of these costs. We don't have any huge costs from this emergency we're in right now. This isn't like a hurricane where we have to spend $100,000 to clean up our road, and so on and so forth. But we do have some incidental costs, and really the incidental costs are equipment and supplies for our first responders.
All right, and Ed, are we taking into consideration the fact that there may be an uptick in the fall and possibly the following spring?
Well, this would give us the supplies to see us through that.
Okay, good.
Provided we can obtain supplies. But
Well, yeah, because everybody's bidding against each
I'm
other.
hoping that in a couple of months, the supply chain will open up. We have received some supplies from our health district, but they have distributed, our health district has distributed, 10,000 surgical masks and,
Excuse me.
they're running out of their supplies. Some things are just impossible to get a hold of, like Tyvek suits. Goggles are next to impossible. I managed to get, I think I managed to get 10 goggles.
Yeah, sometimes the goggles are not as preferable as the face shields.
Well, they actually want both, the goggles and the face shields simultaneously.
Yeah, I'm just saying when they had to look at the two of them. The only reason why I know this stuff is because I work at a hospital.
Yes.
We're at the state.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I.
No, the goggles, the reason.
That's how I know certain things because
goggles was because
being
of
drilled in our heads.
request from the Middlefield Volunteer Fire Department for goggles. That was specific.
Okay, we can move on now. Let's go to the next item. Al?
Yes, let's see, capital non-recurring, that number's just been changed to reflect the capital schedule that we previously discussed, which is
Right.
900,711 minus the LoCIP funding.
And we have any confidence about the LoCIP funding?
Yeah, I mean, we have put in our application for this year, and it changed from the original estimate by about $500. So this is the estimate that we have now. And I mean, that's the best information we have. The year before, the actual number went down about $500. So but this is what we have right now.
Okay,
Okay.
The contingency number is just a mathematical calculation based on total expenses minus certain things. So that number will change every time any budgeted line item changes.
but again, our policy is 1.5% of variable expenses.
And the only
So
other
the 200
changes,
or the $2,000 for Old Home Days was something we had added before because it's postponed this year. It's now going out into next year.
Right.
Or funding for next year. And then here down at the bottom is the new school number at a zero net year over year. Gives us, you can see here the $300,000 reduction from when Catherine presented. Originally it was 11,980. Now we're down to 11,670 some. So that was a big change. Net, our total town expenses are likely down 300,000-ish with all of these changes we talked about today from the first selectmen's budget. Okay. Any other questions for Al on any of the items on expenses? Okay, so thank you for everybody for hanging in. There is one other thing I think I'd like to talk about, and that is the schedule going forward. And let me see if I can bring up the calendar. Hey, everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this was the calendar of events that we are for our activities with regard to moving the budget forward. We are here at our workshop on the 23rd. We have had scheduled another workshop on next Thursday to really prepare our final proposal that we will publish as the Board of Finance proposal to go toward public review.
Right.
Now, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we'll have the public invited or able to attend next Thursday's meeting. We will publish it on our town website, the results of that discussion, and then have the opportunity to review any input that we get through email or at that meeting, and begin to think about setting a collection rate firmly, which will then give us a full budget to present for public hearing, which will on the 21st of May, which will be a live video conference with those attending who care to attend for a class hearing on to adopting a budget in the second Monday of June. And in black here, you can see the revised school budget. So that will be snapped with an adoption by the Board of Ed on the 27th. So we'll be sure whether it's the zero increase that we see now or any other modification, we'll have a firm number to be able to use in our adoption. And this timing also gives us the opportunity to see some of those changes and react to, with our budget, some of the changes in spending as the tail end of this fiscal year happens, and redo the balances in some of those capital line items and so on. So that continues to be our calendar. And we'll continue to anticipate a workshop for further discussion of what our intentions are and maybe more on both the fund balance application and any other items next week.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, any other comments about any of the aspects from our board members?
Not at this time.
Okay, so public comment, Marianne or Everett?
Before public comment, I just wanted to let the Board of Finance members know that the Board of Selectmen at its meeting on Tuesday adopted, as you I believe I might have discussed with you earlier, that the governor, one of the governor's executive orders requires the town to adopt either a tax deferment program or a low interest program regarding taxes. And on Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen adopted both programs. The tax deferment, which is a 90-day program. So taxes that would normally be due on July 1st would now be due on October 1st. And the low interest rate program would reduce any taxes, unpaid taxes for a period of 3 months to a rate of 3%, that's 0.25% per month. So we adopted both programs. The low interest program will have a very minor impact. Was most people will obviously use the if they want to defer their taxes, if they have a legitimate reason to defer their taxes for 3 months, would use that program. If they don't use that program and they don't pay their taxes for 3 months, they wait till the end of September, they would only have to pay 0.25% per month instead of 1.5% per month. So those are the two programs. You have to make an application for the deferment program. It's not automatic. So we are working on a form, which we will probably publish on Monday. People will be able to apply for a deferment of their taxes for 3 months. But if they don't pay the taxes within that 3-month period, then they will retroactively be required to pay an 18% annual interest rate on the paid balance.
Okay.
Any questions about those items? Okay, then moving to public comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It's Mary Ann Corona. Hi, David. You guys have done a really, really good job given the stressful times we're living in. I serve on a couple of statewide boards, and I thought you might be interested in some of the comments and what's happening. All of the environmental boards that I know that have big conferences, 300-400 people, are moving everything towards the fall with hopes they'll even be able to hold them then. And then on the street here in Middlefield, Rockfall, the word is there will be no Durham Fair this year. And if the Durham Fair decides to try to hold it, they anticipate about 50% of the people will attend. Having worked at the Durham Fair, like many of you folks over the years, I cannot see myself in a booth cooking hamburgers or anything with anyone else. But that does reflect on Middlefield and all the boards, or not the boards, but the groups that depend heavily, and this is of grave, grave concern, on the revenue that they obtain at the Durham Fair. The town also collects a pretty good sum of money for the parking of the cars on the Strickland farm. So I thought that you might, well, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but that is going to have some consequences on the community. The other thing across the state, I went to a board meeting the other night. There are 170 wetland commissions, and I sit on the board that represents them for Middlesex County and have for many years. I would be more than happy to look at the $20,000 that Rebecca Adams is asking for to see if we cannot, because we work directly with DEEP. Now, I'm sure most of you know that the power for wetland commissions does not come locally, but comes down from DEEP. And we have people up there that I can ask to do research or provide resources for whatever it is, the $20,000. If somebody would let me know what it's for, I'd be happy to follow through on that to see if we can save a few dollars on that. The other thing which was interesting to me the other night when I attended, I call it electronically, the board meeting from across the state. Most of the towns that chatted around the table, now remember these are environmental folks, they all think that about 75% of their population has its mortgage, have the mortgage and the taxes together. And so if they can't pay the mortgage, then the taxes will either be delayed or be very difficult for them. And I just share that with you from a more statewide, conversations. But back to the Durham Fair, if there is no Durham Fair, that has some pretty significant consequences on the people. And I've been one of them in the past many years, helped to raise money for the library and the rest of us, and the churches, the political parties. So, it's going to be a difficult year for everybody, and that'll be reflected in the community and its needs. Is that helpful to you? I only mean that to be helpful. David's been through this too.
No, it is, Mary Ann. The other thing is that only 30, what is it, Jim? 30% of our
Yes.
taxpayers actually have their taxes tied to their mortgage.
That's good. That's good. That's much less than most of the other communities.
Yeah, so I think that'll actually be an advantage to us in some ways.
It is. But back to the...
Al and I were on a webinar the other day. It was late last week or earlier this week. It gets to be a blur, but anyway, the average in the state of Connecticut is 50%. This is from some analysts that put out a presentation. Yeah, in Middlefield here, 30% of the taxpayer, that's 30% of the accounts are in escrow.
Right, right.
The actual dollar amount of revenue is higher than that.
Right.
But
And
that's,
the escrowed accounts are not eligible for the deferment program.
right.
So those, we can expect, I think Ann said, for the 6 biggest escrowed accounts, we received 2.2 million in July, and we can expect the second 2.2 million in January.
You
So,
hope.
so we know we're going to get $2 million.
Right.
Well, those are just the biggest accounts. That's not
Right.
the total amount. Okay.
Right.
That was
So-
a quick analysis that we did the other day.
That's interesting because it's a subject across the state, Ed, for many people. But back to helping out the Wetlands Commission, I'd be happy. We have tremendous resources. The power for, as I said, for local wetland commissions comes directly from DEEP. And we had a big meeting the other night, and she's gotten 2 or 3 more staff people on the wetlands unit up there, which would be very helpful. And there's so many towns that get the advice for whatever it is, and I'd be happy to make the request for us. But if you could get me the specifics of what it is Rebecca needs, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, I represent Middlesex County and have for many
Yeah,
years.
I can. So when we talked with Rebecca and Randy about the additional costs this year and also their request for next year, their comments had to do with a large portion of those extra costs were in legal fees, because we are actually taking to court, we have to take to court some offenders that are violating our activity. And so that was part of the discussion, but and both for this year and then again for next year. I'll be happy to get from Rebecca a little more granularity
That would be
on
good.
what those are, and I'll be happy to share with you.
That's good. Again, once in a while, the state will come around and if it's a big legal issue, they will provide the necessary legal services. But again, I have to be able to communicate to them what it is that needs to be done.
Mhm.
And I appreciate the opportunity, guys, and thanks a lot for everything that you do.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks
welcome.
very much.
Thank you.
If I could just mention that currently right now, our thought on the Durham Fair, this is from a public health perspective from our Director of Health. Laura Francis has been on many conference calls with our health district because of the fact that Durham and Middlefield have share a school district. We want to make sure our 2 towns are on the same page. So Laura has joined all our communications and so on with, yes, you're laughing. Anyway.
I was laughing at something else. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so anyway, that's the large gatherings are likely not to be permitted going forward. Public large gatherings, there might be a limit, maybe of 100, maybe 50. Private gatherings, hopefully by the summer, private gatherings, for example, if someone's having a wedding reception, there could be those could be permitted, with some kind of limitation, maybe 100, maybe 200 people, something like that. But large public gatherings, not going to happen. I give the chances of the Durham Fair happening at less than 5% at this point.
Well, the reason I brought it up, one of the reasons I brought it up, Ed, is what's going to happen to the groups in Middlefield, the political parties, the library, and I've worked in a lot of those groups, with a lot of those groups, the church. They're not going to have the resources they've had in the past.
Yeah, we talked to the library about that when they came to our workshop with them to see how much and if they were going to
Right.
need more assistance because of the fact that she said they don't really make a whole lot from that, and they have alternatives on what they were going to do specifically for the library.
And we've talked to the fire department about it. We've talked to
Good, good.
departments that have come before us.
Yeah.
The Durham fair not happening. So we've figured from the beginning of this that that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I'm a lion in town. Dave's a lion. Mike's a lion. Ed's a lion. We know that that's our single largest fundraiser, and we're worried about how we're going to support the things we support in town next year, because this is the year we raise the money for next year. Oh yeah,
Right.
Al's in Killingworth. So we know that this year is going to hurt every group economically, and it's going to really ultimately also wind up taxing our town and some of the other things, even because if we can't make the money, we can't donate the money. We can't give to the Food and Fuel Bank like we give to the Food and Fuel Bank if we can't do the Durham Fair and make the money. So it's ultimately this next year, the next budget cycle is going to look a lot different than this one. And believe me, we're all worried about tightening our belts on this one. So prepared for next year.
Well, maybe we can come up with some ideas to help with, especially with the food and the fuel, okay?
Well, we know that we have a lot of very generous organizations that are working on that still, and we know that the Lions, certainly when we look at to spend our money, that's always one of our top places because that actually helps our neighbors. So we're always worried about that, but we know that there's going to be a lot less of the dollars to spread around in town.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad that we'll all do in my generation what we can do to help, okay?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, so Everett, any comments?
I got nothing. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're grateful that you joined us this evening to listen in on our workshop. Marianne, thank you also for joining. And if anyone else on the board have any final thoughts?
One final thought. I guess the appreciation night for the fire department is being canceled.
Yeah.
I wish there was something we could do for these people. They're a vital volunteer organization. And although we're all sequestered and stuff like that, that whistle still goes off. There's still car accidents. I don't know if everybody saw the thing that Chief Tick sent out having to do with the amount of hours that's put in by our volunteer firemen.
Tremendous.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
It's a devotion.
Well, the one thing I would say is that if we needed extra money for them to have PPE, then the money that we would have spent on the appreciation night this year, that $6,000 could go towards them acquiring more PPE if they need it. I mean, funding wise, I mean, we're taking out of our budget, but that would be something, because being what they're doing, they're at risk, and that would be the best way to make sure they're safe.
Yeah. And show them some appreciation.
Right now, there is no budget on PPE. It's an unlimited, it's an open budget. Whatever we need to spend.
Okay.
Because we are in a state of emergency.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Well, that tells. I mean, for now, that's the best we can do.
I like the the thought on this, and if you want, maybe we should plan sometime next year to have maybe some kind of a public event to
honor them,
honor the firemen, and maybe we could put some additional money in the budget to cover some expenses with that. Just some sort of a public, or maybe hold a concert in honor or something.
Yeah, it's a huge public service.
So maybe I'll your next meeting, maybe we'll have a little recommendation. I'll talk to Hannah, Park and Rec. Maybe we'll put on some special little event. Maybe it'd be a concert and a barbecue or something, or something to that effect.
perfect.
Might be something that we could do.
Cool.
We could try
when we can have large gatherings.
we can We could all do a car parade by the firehouse on a Monday night.
All right.
I'm saying it would happen a year from now, okay? So.
Right.
I
You were
mean,
hoping.
we could all drive by and people.
Well, we could do the car parade though. Have the town come over and say, do the reverse. We
Yeah.
appreciate everything you do.
And we all drive by, beep and wave. It would work. It would work. Actually, you know what? Just continue to be good people and show them that you appreciate them. And when you see them, thank them. And that's, you know what? We have so many of our neighbors that are volunteers, not just in the fire department, people doing on boards and commissions. And even though that our selectmen are elected, the extra amount of time that they're all putting in, and everybody, our town crew, everybody right now, just show your love to all your neighbors and everybody in town, because this is an incredibly difficult time. And the best thing that we can do is support them emotionally. And so just always say thank you and always smile and wave. Just be good people. Be the good people.
And be kind.
Well, that's a nice note to end on. I want to thank everyone here for the extended amount of time our workshop took this evening. Thank you very much. And we'll have the recording on the website. We'll get the minutes out on the website. We have our email on the website. And we'll look forward to convening a workshop a week out, next Thursday at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
So in the meantime, be well, be safe.
Thank you.
Great.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.